the second Talking Point Tuesday, part of the Innovation Observatory's monthly event for small businesses. So today we are looking at horizon scanning for industry, and we'll be joined by two members of the IO team, Sonia and Claire, who I'll let introduce themselves in a minute. And then also Shona is going to join us as well to give us an update on some research she's been conducting in horizon scanning for neurotechnologies. So just before I start, here's some of the next sessions. So as said, this is a monthly session. So it's normally the third Tuesday of the month, but sometimes it doesn't kind of work out that way. So that's the dates and the next sessions there. So if you go onto the QR code, that takes you to the LinkedIn page for the Innovation Observatory, and you'll be able to find further details on that. So this is today's session, Innovation Horizon Scanning for Industry. And I will hand over to my colleagues Claire and Sonia, who are going to do some keynote talks about how industry can utilise horizon scanning to its fullest advantage. And also, actually, just to say at this point as well, part of the Talking Point Tuesday, part of the model is we have a session at the end, so it's 11:30 till 12. There's an opportunity to have a one-to-one, aka one to a group of about 4 experts. Just if you've got any kind of questions you want to ask specific to your company, where you are in terms of needing information for growth, strategy, market assessment. So if you wanted to have a chat with one of the groups, if you just come and find me, and we'll arrange that for between 11:30 and 12. It's only kind of a 10-minute drop-in session, which can be physical or virtual. So that's kind of an option at the end of the session as well, if you want to take that up. So I'll hand over to Claire and Sonia.
Hello, I'm Claire Eastaugh, my colleague Sonia, and we're going to talk about horizon scanning sources and methods. So I am a research assistant information specialist here at the NIHR Innovation Observatory. I've been here for nearly 4 years, and I help with the horizon scan searching in reviews that take place.
I'm Sonia. I'm a research associate at the IO. I've been here for nearly 8 years since we first started in April 2017. I am an information specialist by background, but I also lead methods development for horizon scanning in medtech.
So today this is a quick agenda that we're going to go through for the next 15 minutes or so. We have some interactive tasks that we'd like everybody to take part in. We're going to look at what horizon scanning is, the horizon scanning process overview, and then we're going to delve a little bit deeper into it to look at the 3 horizon scans in development pipeline, which are identification, filtration and prioritisation, and implementation. So we're going to use Menti. There is a QR code on the screen, but also if you go to menti.com, you can use code 26766996, and we're going to answer some questions. The first one is going to be, are you familiar with the concept of horizon scanning? That's going to be our first one. So I'll give you a second. And let's see how it goes. If we can switch over to the Menti, that would be great. Brilliant. So we have a bit of a split between the yes and somewhats and 2 no's, which is actually really good because it means that you might actually learn something in this session. So that works to our benefit. Anybody who put somewhat, can you volunteer, or would you be able to volunteer what you mean by somewhat? What is your understanding of horizon scanning? Yes?
I put somewhat because I'm not sure if it's horizon scanning that I do.
Yeah.
That counts, but I think it's looking around for trends or opportunities to develop things.
Yeah? Anybody who put yes, would you volunteer to say what you are understanding horizon scanning as?
Come on, any IO volunteer.
Yes.
I said yes. I think it's similar, but like scanning the landscape for kind of what's out there in particular fields.
Yeah. I think what we're going to go through and find is that sometimes it's very similar concepts, just applied in different ways. And I think that's hopefully going to come out in our presentation today. So the next question we have is, have you ever undertaken horizon scanning as part of your work? So not that there's been horizon scanning in your, that as part of it, but you have actually done horizon scanning.
Or what do you think is horizon scanning at this point?
By your definition.
Okay, that's
really impressive.
That's quite solid. Yeah.
So who wrote yes? Yes. What have you done as part of your horizon scanning?
So hi, those of you that don't know, I'm Molly and I work at the IO. So what we do is a whole different range of things. Specifically, I work on a project at the moment that does lots of bit of horizon scanning, mostly for different stakeholders, and we've done one, for example, in the summer that was looking at brain cancer. So we had looked on various repositories to find out what was going on in terms of medicines and devices and some diagnostics as well in that particular field. It goes to about 5 years before those begin to come on the market. So looking back quite a way into the mists of the horizon. So yeah, that's a good clue in that one.
Were you actively involved in the scan, or were you more in the I'm going to assume no means, well, there's no point asking. And finally, for now, do you currently undertake any horizon scanning to support your intelligence gathering? So that might not necessarily be specifically you, but it could be a member of your team within your organisation. It could be that you have horizon scanning, but you're here to gain that understanding yourself and not be so dependent on other people. And sometimes it's nice to understand the process that other people undertake, especially when you're doing an analysis. Okay. So whoever currently said that yes, they do currently undertake horizon scanning, would they be able to speak a little bit more about that? Yes, thank you.
I was going to say, when you're trying to understand like a new market or sector, it's just not like, it's like knowing where to start. So kind of normally you sort of reach out to like a network, you know, where businesses or congregations say, you know, they just pick their brain, choose their way and try and find out where pain points are.
That's there's some very good points in there. Like the picking the brains analogies is exactly right for me. Thank you, Stu. If we can go back to the presentation, please. So I'm going to hand over to Sonia, who's going to go in a little bit more detail about what we've talked about. And we're going to drill it down to give you more of an IO definition, and so you can see where we're coming from for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Claire. So someone mentioned that I don't know whether what I do is horizon scanning, and that's a very common situation. Some people may refer to horizon scanning in a slightly different way. You may have heard of trend analysis, or foresights, or strategic foresights, or looking for wildcards. Environmental scanning also used interchangeably. There's a lot of jargon, and not everybody is very clear what everything means, but they are slightly different things, and I'm hoping that after this presentation today things are a little bit more clear of what horizon scanning means. So in terms of what horizon scanning is a technique or a method. It belongs to a broader family of methods under the umbrella of the Futures and Foresights methods. And the UK Futures and Foresights methods toolkit, which has just been updated in April, May this year, June actually, presents 3 subgroups, and I think I'm gonna kind of use that way of explaining what horizon scanning is and what you can do with that from your point of view as an entrepreneur, a company or a business, or someone who has a great idea and wants to develop it further. So first of all, there are the methods that help you understanding what is changing in your environment. And there are a number of methods for that, one of which is horizon scanning. I think is the most widely practiced. Then we've got implications for your future. So what those changes mean for me and my future, my business, my idea. So there are a number of different methods there. And then what do we do? So I've got all that intelligence, I know what it means to me, and then so how I can put it into a strategic plan or practice. So there is another kind of different methods. So I'm hoping that I can cover mainly horizon scanning and a couple of the other 2, so you can have like a full journey of what to do with that intelligence after you horizon scan. So this is what I'm planning on doing today. So you are in the middle, the core. That's your business, your idea, and then first of all, you need to know what's happening around you. Is there anything similar to your idea? Is there another product? Where are these products in the development pipeline? Then what does that mean for my future, for my idea? Does it mean that I need to develop my product in a slightly different way in another region, engage with other stakeholders, slightly change the characteristics, and how do I go about doing this? So we're going to look at horizon scanning, very briefly at SWOT analysis and road mapping. So this is just to give you an idea of the very many different ways of defining what is horizon scanning. Not even experts kind of seem to be agreeing on what horizon scanning is, but from this I think you get the idea that it's a systematic way of doing something. So I think in the IO for us it's very important to draw in robustness, transparency, systematicity. So we do a systematic, examination of your environment, and that could mean threats, opportunities, future problems, any development that may affect you. It may be other technologies, other ideas similar to yours that you are not necessarily aware that they exist. So you want to search beyond what you know, because if you're searching only around what you know, you may be missing very key, important intelligence. And then we do it in a way that it needs to be timely. There is no point in doing all this exercise if it's not going to help you making decisions. So the timeliness is also quite important. So I think systematicity, looking beyond what we know in a timely fashion, that's kind of what we do at the IO. Here is a framework developed on the theory of the 3 horizons. That's a theory that emerged from commercial companies looking into how they could sustain growth over time while still embedding innovation. So the 3 horizons model look at the immediate horizon, the kind of transitional horizon, and the emerging. So it basically is saying you cannot just focus on one horizon, because if you develop your plan for one horizon only, let's say 2 years, 3 years, you can adapt and decide how far that horizon is for you and your business. There may be something happening in the transitional horizon that will impact you, and you need to be prepared for that. So this is a way of looking at the 3 horizons. In particular for medtech technologies development, this is the area I work most, the kind of technologies that I work with, medtech technologies. And these are very varied medical devices, in vitro diagnostics, and digital systems or tools. So this is just an idea of how the Three Horizon model maps against sort of agreed pipeline development of those technologies. And there are some caveats here because digital technologies do develop faster. So this is just assuming a linear development. But it has been agreed internationally, and I think it kind of works well with our UK stakeholders as well. I just want to introduce this idea because we're going to refer to that next. There's a lot of information on that slide, but just basically what you can see is depending how far into the future you look at, you may need to be looking in different sources. And that's an importance for us in the practice of horizon scanning. Identifying the right source of information is often quite challenging. So having these kind of pre-agreed and established systems do help us with efficiencies as well. Right, so how do we do about horizon scanning? So horizon scanning usually involves three main stages. The first stage is identifying those things or events, developments, signs that are important for your business, for your idea. Then we obviously need to kind of select those events or developments that are actually important for you, because there's a lot of noise and you don't want to be distracted, you don't want to take into account things that will not matter. So you want to be able to select those that are really relevant for you so you can act on them, which is the last of the stages. So Claire is going to talk to you at length about how you go about identifying those signs or developments. Then I'm going to follow with the next two stages. Yeah?
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Right, so we're going to have a quick look at the horizon scanning approaches. It's very self-explanatory, this one. Scanning technologies, going from the early to late stage of development, usually requires several scans, and it can be one, two, or a combination of these particular approaches. It depends on a lot of factors. Research questions, what are you trying to answer? You need to really think about the research question, and then that will actually help you target your approach. At the stage of the development as well, again, that will help target your search and the type of decision and intelligence that you are trying to inform. Approaches, they may mean methods, techniques, anything. It could be absolutely anything. It's a wide spectrum, and this is why you need to have a good research question, and you need to really drill it down. You have to put a lot of thought in before you even open up a web browser. These are just ways of doing horizon scanning as well, and they can involve different searches, different types of searches, different sources. And like I say, you can do them separately or you can use them in combination. Again, it all depends on what the needs that you're looking for. There is like patients as well. Patient surveys can also encompass some of this as well. And intelligence and the market intelligence can engage with patients in that regard too. Don't discount PPIE, the insights that you can get from that as well. So, back to Menti. Give everybody a second. Where do you search? So some people admit to doing horizon scanning themselves. Some people know that they have a basic familiarity to different levels. But where do you carry out searches? There is no wrong answer. Do not feel, oh my God, I don't know. You could put Google if you want. It's not a wrong answer. You could, Bing is the only wrong answer. Ask Jeeves. Does that still exist? Show my age there. Sassy comments also welcome. Okay. Give you a couple of seconds more. There are some really, really good responses on there. I don't know which Claire you're asking, but yeah. I may have joked about just saying put Google on there, but genuinely it is a good place to use. It is a good resource. Don't discount the search engine. Just know that there are certain limitations involved, algorithms behind the scenes. Your search history will impact a Google search as well. You know, consider your sources. But yeah, library, person after my own heart there. Trade show conferences, trial registry, clinical trials, newspapers, ChatGPT, again, question your sources if any AI function that you do use. News, yes, networking, news sites, journals, word of mouth. These are all really good sources to use for horizon scanning.
Cobra.
I've not heard of Cobra.
Can someone talk about Cobra?
Did anybody in the room put Cobra?
Would you like to talk about what's Cobra? No? Okay, maybe later. I'm very keen to know.
We'll talk in a minute. Publications, I'm guessing that's like bibliographical publications, news website publications. Yeah? Excellent. Thank you very much, Stu. So what we're going to do is kind of overlay, keep those in mind, keep all of those places in mind, because I'm intrigued by a couple of them, and there was a lot there that I use myself. And what we're doing is taking that model that Sonia has already shown us, and we're going to overlay it, so we can kind of build a picture of horizon scanning. So we've got the 3 horizons, and we're going to have a bit more of a think about when you do your searches, where those particular needs, those approaches might be that you have to answer your research question, where they might fall within the horizon itself. So something like a product pipeline is going to last from preclinical all the way to post-market surveillance, whereas a patent might only be in the early stages of the 3rd horizon, innovation or preclinical. Funding can happen throughout. Clinical trials has that lovely dotted line, because clinical trials, obviously it happens at clinical trial stage, but you don't discount any product that may be re-entering clinical trials because it's changing, it's being reutilised in a different way, potentially for a different intervention, or it might already have regulatory approval, but it has to go back through the trial stages. So don't discount them at that stage either and think, well, I'm only looking for trials. I'm only going to look, I'm in that middle section. I don't need to consider it as part of post-market surveillance. Actually, it's pretty vital that you do. This is also very much a happy path. I like that terminology, it's a happy path. It's the ideal. There are some mixtures, but this is essentially where you would look, where the approaches are overlaid over the horizon themselves. And because I'm an information specialist and a trained librarian, list of resources. So this looks at all those different search approaches, but it also looks at the search sources. And I don't know if the PowerPoints are being shared. I look into the distance, but I've hyperlinked as well. So it's all there. And some of them you'll notice are shared sources between product pipeline and intelligence and insights, and that's because they do offer very similar intelligence that can be utilised in different ways, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. These are all open access sites as well. So without knowing specifically what industries, organisations that you are with and what credentials you may have, I've only offered open source. Don't discount what if you are connected to an academic institution, what credentials you might be able to tap in at that point, or what other people in your organisation may be able to access as well. Thinking about the sources that you put on Google is straight away the first one I thought of. And as an information specialist, I use Google all the time. It's so helpful when you're doing a horizon scan just to get a sense of what that particular need is. So, for example, bioengineering's project I'm on at the moment, I understand the concept of what bioengineering is, but I may not know the fundamentals of it that could help a search. I'm going to go to Google. So don't discount Google as a starting point. Set up alerts if you have a particular product that you are investing in or that you are developing. Use Google Alerts to tell you and push that intelligence to you, so then you're not having to do these searches again and again and again. And what I would also say as an information specialist, make a note of your searches. Write down exactly what day you've done, where you've gone, and what you've searched for, because it'll help any repeat of that search that you need to take place. Or if you need to do any kind of write-up and say, I searched on the 1st of June for X, Y, and Z, and it's December, but you didn't write it down properly and you don't know where you've gone. Don't make that mistake. I did that, don't do it. Learn by my mistakes. But we've also got other places that you can look. So depending on what the product is that you might be developing, charities are a really good resource. Other organisations that are within the same developing group as you, with the same field, look at their market reports, look at their website, see what they're doing, and then you can also look on clinical trials registers. So clinicaltrials.gov is a free one. Scan Medicine is on there as well. They're all free. Use them, and don't just, if you're doing a drug or developing a device for cancer treatment, don't just search cancer. Use your synonyms, use other terms from them as well. And you might have to do a search each time for each different word, but it will help. And then you'll help refine your searches as well a little bit. So it means that you can then say, this one works for me, this one doesn't, which is the whole point of making a note and reporting your searches as you go along. So, back to Menti. We have a question. So the scenario is, Stu, can you put the presentation back up for a second, please? So your scenario is you've set up a spin-off company for magic. It's a prototype that has emerged from research you led while holding a postdoctoral position. You are keen to understand the funding opportunities available in the UK and EU to develop magic further. It's very important to do the hand movements. How would you use horizon scanning to support this task, and which sources would you choose to use? Stu, if we can go back to Menti, that'd be great, thank you. There is no wrong answer. This is your initial thoughts, your feelings on where you would go. And if you've taken a picture of the previous slide, yes, you have a cheat sheet.
And just to say that you can go to more than one source. It's not just one source fits all.
No. The sources depend on your approach, which depends on your question and your need. It all boils together. So we've got sources of the UKRI, which is a funding website, and the NIHR again. Horizon Scan the funding landscape and search funding sources for grants awarded. Yeah, look for funders who have funded similar companies. Yeah, that's really good. Help, especially if you're looking for funding yourself. Good NIHR for a list of funders, utilising the UKRI, NIHR and Cordis. Yeah. And funding websites, national innovation organisations, angel investors, venture capital, brilliant. look to Innovate and UK are Innovate UK and NHIR for funding opportunities, and also speak to local medtech. Brilliant. So we've got a good list of sources that you're going to utilise, as well as the reasons that you're going to utilise them. And what the whole point is we're thinking about, like we've said, the question, the approach, what your needs are, where you're going to go, and how you're going to go about doing that. But once you've got all of that, what do you do? That's the next part. Stu, if we can go back to presentation, please. And we're going to go into filtration and prioritisation. Sonia.
So, I don't think my mic is working. Can you hear me? Now. So you've gathered lots of intelligence in that. Let's kind of carry on with this exercise. It was mostly about funding. I wonder whether you would also want to search other products similar to yours to see characteristics and where are they being developed, or what sort of your potential competitors, what's your market like, at what stage there are these other products, whether they've already launched or they are very early on. Maybe you would want to look at patents. But obviously I understand the concern about the money, because if obviously you don't get the funds, you can't really develop your product further. In any case, you're going to have to apply some selection to that information. You don't want to be overwhelmed. You don't want to be following the wrong lead. So if it's funding you're looking at, you're going to have to work with the funding that actually works for you. So you're going to have to read through all of those kind of funding grants, goals, and see the characteristics and which ones are the ones that may be more applicable to you. So this is all going back to your scope. When you first started your searching, you already had a rough idea what you wanted to find. And it's important to get back to that often throughout this process, so you don't kind of go into a completely different path, unless it's because you've managed to change your scope, because somehow you found information along the way that has made you rethink your product or rethink what you want to do. Unless it's something that you voluntarily want to change, I would encourage you to kind of try and keep that original scope in mind. So now you need to also think, okay, so I've gone through all these sources, I've pulled out all that information, I've read through, I've selected those that I think, I shortlisted 5 funding calls that I think may be relevant to me. Can I then take one step further and think about, so what is the impact? If I go for a funding call that gives me this much money, what can I do with this? But if I go for this one and gets me twice the money, what can I do with this? So you need to kind of start embedding those decisions in your plan. So this is kind of what you need to start thinking about whilst screening, or we refer to this as a screening or selecting the information that you find. We usually tend to work around products, so we start off by looking, and a colleague is going to present to you a good example of how we do this. So we may, go with one technology class or a condition, and then we scan broadly, and then we select those that may fulfill the criteria, and then exclude those that actually don't fulfill that criteria. Your searches will never give you 100% pertinent results. You will get lots of noise, and it is important that you are able to distinguish what's important from what is not. So thanks to Shona, we have this lovely technology radar. So the point of doing this exercise is that you can position your idea or your product or your range of products in the context of what's going on around you. And this is this technology radar that Shona is going to explain after. You can immediately see what other products are in that inner kind of ring where your product is. Your product is as, I don't know, phase 1 clinical trial. You can immediately see who is around you that is in the exact same situation. But then you can also see who is behind you and ahead of you. And that helps you put a plan in place. So this is a really good way of visualizing your idea or your product in the context of what it is that matters to you, and that could have an impact on your business. Right, so we've got another Menti exercise. So we have a very clear idea of how we prioritize and how we filtrate the signals, but you may have a different idea, and I'll be keen to hear what you do, how you select what it matters to you, what sort of, maybe by consensus, maybe you pick brains from other experts, maybe you engage with other audiences. So yes, did everyone get the code? The Menti code? Yeah? Okay, good. Scoring, okay. Okay. Use tools to help you find additional sources. That's interesting. Can someone talk about a scoring? How would you go about kind of rating the relevance? I guess that's what it means. Who is brave enough to talk about scoring? Okay. Oh, willing volunteer. Oh.
So I'll sit with the cord. I suppose for scoring, could you have us, I suppose, related to the criteria, are there particular things you're interested in? And if you've got maybe this and this and this, it's much better than just having this. And I suppose just having a clear criteria to sort of get you there, where you know where you can divide between those that are more promising than these ones.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
easier in practice.
Yeah.
Easier in theory, but harder in practice.
So you need to have that criteria predefined. You need to know what's important for you, and then whether that single technology or funding call, we kind of following on an example that we use in meets the 3 criteria or just one. And yeah, that's a really good way of filtering and prioritizing. So there is another one that caught my attention: connect them to a problem you have identified and see if they can potentially solve it. Can anyone speak to that idea? Yes, please.
I put that there because my experience more in the industry, but I think before you start a development or you start scanning,
Yeah.
you should have ideally have identified a problem you're trying to solve, whether it's commercial or technical or a bedside issue in a hospital or whatever you're trying to solve. And then using scoring as well, you can say which one of these is closer to, you can't know for sure,
Yeah.
but you can definitely exclude some
Yeah.
for whatever reasons, technical, pathways.
Yeah, it could be, you need to be pragmatic at this point, because you don't want to, be, overwhelmed by intelligence, and also you don't want to be distracted either. So it's got to be, you need to come up with pragmatic decision making at this point.
Yes, and I think if you do it
Mm-hmm.
come up with a solution, and if you ask them why do you prefer this solution, they say because we can.
Yeah.
And that's not, and then they try to find a problem after, but that's not, it's the wrong way around. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a really good point. Thank you. Rate the decision process. How can?
Red, amber, green.
Okay, good. Someone mentioned tools. Not everyone has tools at hand to use, but we have developed tools in-house that can help us deal with lots of data at the same time. So our scans tend to retrieve thousands and thousands and thousands of signals. So it is very laborious, and time consuming. So we have developed some tools that help us kind of prioritize and sift relevant results from irrelevant results. That's, I guess, what we mean there. But obviously, if there are tools that you can use, tools are useful when you have great volumes of data. Okay, good. Right, let's move on. Can we? Thank you. Right, so we've selected everything that is relevant to us, and we know why we've selected it, because we have this criteria that we already thought about, and we maybe even ranked the priorities. So we need to then think critically about what it means to us, and why. How do we position your business or your idea in the context of what you have found? And then after you've thought about it, perhaps you need to then do some planning about what are you going to do about it. So one good tool for analyzing how that intelligence or that information may be meaningful for you is to do this exercise. And you can involve more people. It doesn't need to be a one-person job. It becomes richer when you involve a group, and you can have up to 10 or 12 people involved in this exercise. You can break up into groups, and obviously strengths and weaknesses are kind of internal factors of the company or your group, research group or idea. And the opportunities and threats are externally facing factors. And hopefully you have identified those factors in your horizon scanning. So that's kind of an easy sort of brainstorming situation that is very useful to practice, to then think about, analyze this intelligence in this context of your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. The slide will be shared, so there is a link there that has way more information how to actually do it, and some examples. And then lastly, with all that kind of analysis, you see how you can or cannot do these things, and what externally facing opportunities and challenges may impact on what you want to do. Then you need to come up with a plan. And a nice way of planning is a roadmap where you see yourself in the future and you think, okay, in 3 years' time, I want to have my product, made available to patients in the NHS. That's a very great aspiration. So you need to, sorry? Yes, well, it's possible, we just need to plan. So it's kind of, you see that in the future, and then you kind of have to kind of put the breadcrumbs that will lead you to that final ideal situation. And for that, again, it's not a one-person exercise. You need to involve as many people as you can from your context, because they will provide slightly different viewpoints and opinions. And it is not something that is done in a matter of hours. This could take days. And if it needs to take days, it's because it's a complex exercise and there are checkpoints and decisions. This one is an example. It's quite complex. It doesn't need to be that complex. Yours, it's got like three levels or 3 goals in one roadmap. It doesn't need to be that complex, but it is good to have at least some kind of planning. Again, the link there kind of informs you of how to do it in more detail. So yes, that's all I wanted to present. I've got a couple more questions for you. So we talked about foresight methods, and we mentioned that horizon scanning is one foresight method, but it's not the only one. There are others. So I would be keen to understand whether you have heard or used any other method, even if you didn't know it belonged to the family of foresight and futures, and what are your experiences. So if you could kind of drop us some ideas there. Thank you. The answer can be no, if that is what it needs to be. That's fine. Okay, market reports, yes? It could be questions. Okay.
It's useful intelligence for us because it means that we can develop what we need to be able to impart that knowledge and, you know, any potential future talking point Tuesdays as well. So if you don't know, if you're unsure, if you have vague ideas, it's useful for us to be able to take those and then build upon them and help you build upon them. So no is just as a good answer as being able to say in a scientific advisory board. This is our horizon scanning.
Right, good. That's kind of a, we've got no, we've got unsure.
It's a good mixed bag.
It's not a good, it's not a bad balance. Scenario planning, wow, good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right, let's move on because I think we have another one.
Yes.
This is the last one, I promise. So, for those that have not done horizon scanning, after hearing what you've heard today, can you already start thinking of, oh, this is going to be tricky, or what sort of barriers you see embedding this practice in what you do? For those that have done it already, might have found already some challenges or barriers. We would like to hear about those as well. Okay, trusting sources. Takes a lot of time. Okay. Currency of the information, large volume. What are the most relevant databases to search? Complexity to access the data, access to relevant data, filtering for noise, not specific enough, validating information enough to justify investment, affording subscriptions to attain the data. seem to be kind of coming in pairs. They are all very justifiable reasons why. That's why we gave you publicly available sources. So there is a lot of publicly available sources that are trustworthy, like clinical trial protocols. Each source will have a slight limitations. Clinical trials protocols come with dates of update, when they were registered, when they were updated last. You can even see the previous versions of the same protocol and what has changed. So some sources are quite trustworthy and reliable. You know, artificial intelligence or ChatGPT sources, I would not trust that 100% or at all. But if you go to primary sources, and what we have given you is a list of primary sources, they are the ones that we use, so we trust them. It's resource intense, that's for sure, it is. So you need to have a very clear scope and kind of realistic expectations of how you're going to do it and how often. Okay, that's really good information. Thank you very much for being so cooperative. I think I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Shauna.
After.
Oh, of course.
Always be plugging. In the 13th, 14th of November, right here in the TED Theatre at the Catalyst and the workshop in the exhibition space, we have the first ever Future Foresight and Horizon Scan conference. It's the first conference of its type. It's groundbreaking. And there are still some limited tickets available. So if you want to learn a bit more about horizon scanning, the vast scope of horizon scanning, it's coming from a lot of different directions. We're going to have workshops, talks, experts, people's brains you can pick. It's going to be interactive, and there's going to be a lot of networking availability. It is in person. And there is going to be food. So if you would like to register, you can go to Eventbrite and look for Innovation Observatory. You can follow Innovation Observatory for all of the news talks that come out as well, and further conferences that we're doing. And there's another QR code that'll take you straight there if you want to do it. Like I said, tickets are limited. The event is free, it is in person, and it is here. And it is going to be an absolutely astounding event. I should know, I'm on the committee, I have seen it. And it's going to be a really good time, and it's going to be really good to actually build those connections with people who do horizon scanning and know what they're talking about. And you know, people are coming far and wide to be able to be part of this event. So it's a good brain-picking event for people who might be interested as well. So yeah, always be plugging.
Hi, I'm Shona. I'm a research associate at the Innovation Observatory. I've been here about a year now, and I work mostly with the medical devices, diagnostics and digital health technologies. So this is going to be an example of a horizon scan that we've done recently. This was looking at neurotechnology for 3 key research areas in mental health, healthy aging and physical disability. So the aims of this horizon scan, firstly we were looking for technologies that were in development, both in UK and globally, and also technologies that had been recently approved by the US FDA. And finally, along with that, we wanted to assess the challenges and opportunities associated with innovation of neurotechnologies. To achieve this, obviously we did the horizon scan, so that was searching various different information sources where there could be signals of research related to neurotechnology. But then along with that, we did a survey that we sent for patients and public to try and get their opinions and thoughts on neurotechnology as well. So Sonia and Claire mentioned the importance of having a scope for your horizon scan. So for this one, we were looking at health tech, specifically medical devices, diagnostics or digital health technologies. And obviously we're looking at neurotechnologies, so we defined that as healthcare technologies that enable a direct connection of technical components like computers, electrodes, with the nervous system. Within the 3 key research areas, we were looking at some specific conditions to make the scope manageable. So for mental health, we're looking for anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression and personality disorders. Within healthy aging, it was Alzheimer's and other dementias, Parkinson's disease, sensory impairment and neuropathic pain. And then finally stroke and spinal cord injury for physical disabilities. And these were all conditions that we selected based on being promising targets for neurotechnologies. And finally, we're looking for an adult population for these technologies. So I'll just quickly run through the survey that we did. We had 365 responses in total from patient and public. Overall, there was a low level of familiarity with the neurotechnologies, and specifically we mentioned 3 of the most common ones, so brain-computer interfaces, deep brain stimulation and transcranial magnetic stimulation. Unsurprisingly, physical safety was considered of really high importance from the respondents, but there was a kind of split opinion on whether they would find invasive technologies, so like things implanted, for example, to be acceptable. And in general, it was highlighted that there was a lack of accessible information sources on neurotechnologies. For the Horizon scan, it followed kind of the typical process. So from the scope that we went through, then performed the searches. So I mentioned there's various different information sources that were searched. So we looked at clinical trial registries, medtech news sources, conference abstracts, and then published journal articles. Once we got all of those records from the searches, we screened them for eligibility, and that was against the inclusion criteria based on the scope. And then data was extracted from all of those records about the technologies, which was then cleaned in order to identify the actual unique technology, so removing duplicates and things like that. And then from that, we could then analyse the data and get insights in the forms of like trends and what's out there. Yes, I won't run through all this, but this is just the specific sources that we did look at, so different trial registries, and then conference abstracts, journals, and news sites. Again, from each record, we extracted a variety of information just about kind of technology, so just basic things like the technology name, developer, and then like what condition it was for, and then getting more into things like if it had an AI component, what the intended setting was, whether it had FDA approval already, and what stage of development it was at based on the latest clinical trial. So from around just over 7,000 records that were identified, following screening, it went down to about 450 that were actually included in the report. So from those 450 records, there was actually 81 unique neurotechnologies that were identified across the range of the healthcare areas. So stroke, Parkinson's disease and depression were the most commonly indicated conditions for these technologies. And within those technologies, there was a few that were for more than one condition that we were interested in. For dementia and Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease specifically, we looked a bit more at what stage of disease they were targeting, and we found that Parkinson's disease was focusing on kind of moderate to severe disease, whereas those for dementia and Alzheimer's were looking more at the earlier to mid stages of disease. So for each of the technologies, from the data that we extracted, we could look at some trends in just the basic characteristics. So most of the technology didn't have FDA approval, and most of them were non-invasive. There was only 3 that had an AI component, and 1 was unknown. The vast majority didn't have any AI component with them. Included setting, there was a split between hospital and home. The majority was for the hospital use. And then we looked at the place in the care pathway. So the first bars, most of them were for treatment, with fewer for things like diagnosis or management of conditions. And then finally, the types of devices. So most of them were classed as wearables. There was fewer for things like software or surgical devices. From the different types of neurotechnologies identified, we grouped them into some broad categories. The most common was BCI, brain-computer interfaces, deep brain stimulation, and transcranial magnetic stimulation, which would be as expected. But there was some other types of stimulations and technologies found as well. And then this is the technology radar that was developed, as mentioned earlier. So this is for each of the technologies for specific conditions. And it goes from the outer ring, which is ones where there's no stage of development because there's no associated trial found with it, and moves inwards from stage 1, which is the earliest stage of development, to stage 4, post-market. And there was a lot more technologies identified at the earlier stages of stage 1 and 2 compared to stage 3 and 4. So, in conclusion, we identified 81 unique neurotechnologies within this scan, and the most common conditions are Parkinson's disease, stroke, and depression. Again, the most common types of technologies were transcranial magnetic stimulation, deep brain stimulation, brain-computer interfaces. But for these technologies, there was a low level of familiarity from public and patient groups. But there was a substantial portion that would consider using invasive devices, but it was highlighted that there is an unmet need with having accessible information sources where they could look for information on these technologies, but having that information would increase confidence in adopting these new technologies. And again, unsurprisingly, safety was highlighted as being really high importance to the respondents, just reinforcing the need for responsible and ethical development and regulation of these technologies. So that was obviously just a brief overview of the project. The full report is available on the Innovation Observatory website if you did want to read any further into it. Thank you.
Thanks, Shona. That was brilliant, really interesting. We're now going to move into the expert panel. So an opportunity for the audience and the virtual audience to ask the panel any questions on anything that we've covered in terms of horizon scanning for industry, or indeed Shona's research into horizon scanning in neurotechnologies. We're also going to be joined by our colleague virtually. So would like to welcome Dr. Hans-Peter Dorban, who's the Secretary General for Euroscan. So really pleased that he's able to join us today and can join us on the expert panel. So we're going to open out to the audience. Any questions? I'm going to stand here because I'm not mic'd up. I didn't think about that. Hi, welcome, nice to see you. Did you just want to give a quick introduction about Euroscan and what you do and what you cover? That would be amazing, thank you.
Yeah, Euroscan is a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization, the founding roots are going back to 1996 out of a European project. Later on, we had been hosted in Birmingham for quite some time, till 2016, and then we changed also the legal entity to become a not-for-profit organization, and we switched from UK to Germany, where I am, and we did it first in the public agency of what is now called the Federal Institute for Pharmaceutical and medical devices, but now we are hosting our own secretariat, and I'm a public member of the BfArM, as well as I'm now the Secretary General. In principle, I'm a medical doctor, cardiac thoracic surgeon, and I've worked in HDA since 2000, so I'm in Euroscan since 2003. We are open for any kind of public organization. We are for academic organization, either as an organization or as an individual. We are close to, not open to industry, because we want to have, we are serving public institutions, so we have to be free of conflict of interest. But we nevertheless are in contact with industry to get information, which just was described, how we search it and how we get more deeper information on something. Euroscan is open for everybody, and if you want to have, we will soon also publish our third version of a toolkit, so to make it more easy, what I have saw before in relation to where are the sources, how to connect, and actually 25 ministries of health or public agencies are leading our group, and Newcastle, Dawn is now our vice president, just elected last week.
Brilliant. Excellent. That's lovely. Thank you. That was really interesting and really insightful, really helpful. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions for Dr. Hans-Peter? Is there anything that kind of springs to mind about European activity across horizon scanning? So mentioned that can't work directly with industry, but kind of on the periphery. Has anyone got anything around that?
May I just say, we are not just a European association.
Sorry,
we have been founded,
yes,
that's why
it's
we have
global,
the name
isn't
Euroscan,
it? Yeah.
but that's why we have also the IHDS, just you can see behind me, because International Health Tech Scan, half of our members are either from Asia or from Latin America.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, it's
a partner of WHO, so on a global perspective, we are active.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Has anyone got any questions for Sonia, Claire, around their presentations on horizon scanning for industry? Any of the data sources or sources of intelligence, or when you're looking at your evidence and compiling it, methods? Has anyone got any questions around that? Yeah, please. Oh, we could do with that mic. Sorry.
I just have just a question for Shauna. It's a very basic question, but an excellent piece of work. How long did it take from start to finish?
I think a couple months. We had a team working on it though, so probably like 5 of us doing the bulk of the kind of screening, data extraction, data analysis work.
So 5 people for 2 months, more or less?
Yeah, and then a few more. So like Claire was the information specialist, Sonia was one of the like project leads. But yeah.
Thank you.
Not full time though.
I've got a question actually just off the back of that one.
Not full time.
Obviously, leading on from that question, for 2 people, 5 people for 2 months, like what would your advice be to, a business owner that's pushed for time, that wants to conduct that kind of research but just doesn't have the capacity to do it? Like, are there any tips or that you could sort of give to sort of streamline that process but get the results that they want?
It all starts with the question, doesn't it? And the scope. Find out what are your limitations. So if it's a particular product, are you UK based? So you may want to limit on your searches to just UK industries or UK sources, or research that's taking place in just the UK. Even language limitation. I hate adding bias. This is adding bias, and as a systematic reviewer, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're trying to gather some horizon scanning intelligence is foundational for a report, you might think, well, I'm a UK-based industry. My competitors are a UK-based industry. I'm going to just look at the intelligence that's within the UK. because if you take it to the government for for them to look at and validate, then they might not be bothered by what's going on in the EU or in China or something. They want to know what's going on in the UK and what competitive market is there. So you might just want to instantly add those limitations on there, and that will reduce your pop down. And that tells you, well, I'm not going to look at clinical trials that are taking place in the UK. There needs to be clinical trials within America. I need to look at clinical trials that are within the UK. But you also need to acknowledge that is an added bias that you are doing from the outset. You need to know that's what's happening. But then it's just, so you're looking at your question and saying exactly what you need to do, what you need to pinpoint those exact pressure points of information, and then target your search. And I noticed one of the pieces of challenges was, you don't know when to stop. It's an applying experience when you've done anything. When you're just doing research for your own hobbies, you get to a point of saturation and you think, yeah, I'm finding less and less and less at this point. So actually, I think I need to stop. If you are 20 pages down on Google search, I think you might have gone a bit too far. Dial it back. Yeah, haven't slept for 3 nights. I'm on my 5th cup of coffee. You need to know your limitations, but you also need to think, well, I've done some clinical trial searches. I've searched some funding websites. I've done a bibliographical search, and yeah, the sources were broad. But I'm now dealing with 10,000 pieces of data. Is that logistically realistic? Or do you think you need to have dialed it down a little bit further again? It's practice. Sorry, it's practice. It does come with practice. But also ask people who you may have connections, and some people did say they're somewhat knowledgeable horizon scanning. Well, ask somebody who's done a horizon scan before, if they can just give you those little hints and tips of advice. Somebody put LinkedIn as a source that would go, or you can go to LinkedIn and ask a question, and if you hashtag it correctly, I'm sure somebody will probably help there as well. So it's just thinking about when it comes to title and abstract screening of your numbers. You've got 10,000. Well, actually, that 10,000 includes a lot of European clinical trial data. Do I need that? Can I cut that out? Is that fat I can cut? Because that doesn't help. It's not fruit. And then suddenly you're down to 5,000, and you're like, well, I've got 5,005 people on my team. How quickly can we get through that? Because once you get past that title abstract screening stage, your numbers are going to probably go right down. Because at that stage you've got your eligibility criteria of what you need to find, and you have to very strictly apply it. Your numbers are going to decrease quite a lot, and then that'll obviously help with the rest of the process.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank
Building
you.
on that, Hans-Peter, so say I was a small business, and obviously I couldn't go to you directly, but in terms of if I was looking at the global market and I wanted to look at internationalisation strategy, and I wanted to move into global markets. So I'm currently in England, and I want to look at markets in North America. Would there be any kind of data set, intelligence, insights that you could recommend in terms of that global outface? Are there any kind of recommendations you would give to industry, where to look, where to go?
I saw also the question on here on the chat. I think it's the work we just have seen from Newcastle is showing an overview about a complete set of the area. That's why it takes also so long, and you have so many findings, and you have to check for it. If you are an SME, and then it's not this. Then you have a totally other kind of approach. And if you go for US data, you have to keep in mind what stage of level of development your technology has and you would like to look at. You will hardly find something before level 4B, because at this level you normally do not have to mention any kind of study. So you do not have to register. So whatever at this time, if you're looking for something at this time, you will hardly find something in clinical.gov or whatever. If you go to US, for example, I would immediately recommend that you have very early access to FDA, because they have this kind of procedure where you can get in something like a consultation process with them. And even if they cannot tell you that there are other kind of products on the market, but they can tell you at least what's going on. If you look if you're on a stage of TLR 7 to 8, you can find something as well as in the clinical.gov or WHO register for studies, but you can also find something in notified bodies, in this case in US and FDA. So you will find additional information because the product is also closed for publication and they want to get awareness. In this case, you will find also more often information in conference announcements or something like this. And but you have to keep in mind that horizon scanning is more individualized therapy of a patient. So it's individualized collection of information about a technology if you go on a specific question. So focusing on the question, clarifying which sources are the best, is an individual process. And what Newcastle has done with what the colleague just has done with neurotechnology is needed to bring us the topics into the mind about it. And this is something in overview, and that's why it's taking so long. So normally the process can be done faster, but then it's also a more focused question with a limited number of resources, because as bigger the numbers is getting, as longer it will take to find a good answer, a valid answer. So FDA would be a good approach in US. Specific resources on early phases are not existing. Later on you can use study registers or conference announcements.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, that's really helpful. Has anyone got any more questions? Are there any online, Jen?
Just one that we kind of answered.
Oh, that one. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Sorry.
I have
Yeah.
one more, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
This could be for anybody.
You've got 10 minutes. Ask as many as you like. No pressure.
Were you sure? No. Thank you. It's a practical one. So I work in industry, and so this could be for anybody if you have experience. How would you, to take the SME scenario you mentioned before, each one of us has a boss at some level.
Yeah.
Whether it's your manager or your customers or whatever it is, your funders. How would you justify being given the time or money, or both, to run a proper horizon scanning exercise? Because in a lot of companies that I work with, they think they're doing proper horizon scanning. After today, I realized they're not.
Yeah.
I always suspected it. And the main reason that when we perhaps might suggest, well, why do you do this? They'll say, well, we can't justify it. Because if I go to my manager and say, look, I need a couple of, not 2 months, but 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I say, I haven't got 2 weeks. There's all these projects running and people are asking. So if anyone has experience of justifying successfully such an exercise, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
I think that would be me. So my background is industry, and did kind of quite a large chunk of consultancy. So was employed by FTSE 40s, food and drink manufacturing. So always development, organisational development, personal development, business development, and moved into business support and internationalisation. So last summer I was asked to do a piece of consultancy for a health tech company that had been launched 5 years, but was kind of at a period that it needed to reinvigorate, look at possible pivots, and look at how they needed to move forward. So they'd gone to a funder and asked for some market assessment funding. So I think here lies the tale, that a market assessment, having done market assessments, it's quite, I'm going to say superficial, which sounds flippant, but just to kind of illustrate the point. So very top level, very skimmed, very basic desktop research, whereas horizon scanning, particularly for the sector, you'll go into those pure data sets, and you're looking at direct competitors because it's so niche, whereas kind of a normal industry market assessment is quite simplistic. And I would justify it in terms of your end result. So you're going to get a really robust piece of evidence that you would have synthesized, you would have checked the sources. So I've been at the Innovation Observatory a year, and that's one of the things that I learned in my first 3 weeks, because I attended a evidence synthesis workshop, and it was like, oh my God, I would never have thought about, I'm just being very open and honest here, I would never have thought about checking my data sets. So specifically, particularly for this market, so if you're not checking what the data source is for a piece of research, piece of evidence, to make sure that it's not biased, who's paid for the research, where's it come from, is it authentic, and it kind of links to Sonia's point as well, about if you're doing kind of AI scanning, what are the data sources, what are the links, and you need to go back in and check that specific research. So I think horizon scanning is a completely different beast to what industry would possibly just call a market assessment. It's way more complex, deeper, interrogative. And I think I would argue that case, that it's not just a superficial desktop research exercise, lightly scanning what's out there. It's a real, I don't know, it's kind of a bit of a tweet term, isn't it? But it's like a serious deep dive.
So you justify it then on the level of quality.
Quality.
Quality
Yeah.
information.
And quantity.
And quantity.
So you're going to get a much wider set. If you're doing a proper horizon scan, then that low-level market assessment, so both, and that it's going to be robust. And also, in terms of sustainability, it would target, it would reveal kind of earlier stage companies, products, whereas just a market assessment wouldn't go into that level. So if you're going back into like clinical trial registers, what's coming up on the market, it's much more at an earlier stage than what you would find just doing a superficial. That's a massive argument. Yeah. I'll send you some notes.
I would also...
And it's biased too, probably, as you said, because
You need to acknowledge your bias, and yeah.
you're biased because
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it's Peter.
No, just to add something. What you just described is totally true. This is what we have experienced since we have been founded, but at this time we had mainly checking for resources and validate them. 5 years ago, we have been involved in a project within the European Commission, and this was also how to break it in specific areas. In this case, it was nanotechnology. And we have then founded part of a consortium nanotechnology in something the European Commission called Open Innovation Test Beds. The process there is totally different. So the process there is based on mainly what you described at the end, early dialogue, early advice, so to get very early in touch with the companies to identify also their intended purpose, because very often we have realized in these early phases that the engineers have an idea what they want to produce, but not really connected to the medical indication of the health indication of it. So we have implemented there these kind of early dialogue, early advice processes, which are leading then to scientific advice. For example, UK with your agency, or in Europe with the relevant agencies and notified bodies you are in need of. For this, as a sustainable approach, we have founded ORTB Pathway, and this ORTB Pathway is open for industry. And it's connecting a specific kind of services as needed within the phases the company is looking for. So we have also on the website ortb.eu, you will find even a UK-based company, where the owner is describing how he profit from this kind of early phase of dialogue and procedure, because this was exactly what we have changed, and which is not part of horizon scanning. It's part of the business development, how we can support it by offering unmet needs, clarifying the intended purpose of a technology, and then we have the deal. If you give us your data, then we can even evaluate whether it's fitting to our system or not. So the issue is there, within the dialogue with the public agencies, you will get much earlier aware of what's going on, and the result we offer then as a specific kind of impact report, which you can use, for example, to go to your investors, to go to your owners, and see what's going on. By this we found out that, and this was also the result from the UK company, we have opened the mind of the engineers what to do, and by this we could bring in much more cooperation instead of confrontation when you come at the end to regulatory bodies and want to get approval. So this is what we can recommend, and actually it's implemented not only in Europe, but also by partners in Malaysia and Brazil. This is the way we think it's more constructive common future, instead of we are checking something in the public agency and we are saying no when you come. So by this we try to save your money and our time.
Brilliant. That's really helpful, actually. Thank you. That was really good. Has anyone else got any more questions? Or Nick, anything to add? Do you need a mic?
Really quick answer. I'll try and speak now.
Okay, shout.
One of the things, we sort of do a lot of horizon scanning. We also do the other end of, essentially a pay. And I think one of the arguments you can make for doing horizon scanning is actually, though it might take you time at the beginning, it might actually save you months. Actually, once you get to the pay, you've done your research, you've prepared, you know what your competitors are doing. We know that, that the sense that when we get to the health and technology assessment stage, we look at these assessments and we can know whether someone's done their research or not. And if they come to, so we do stuff with NICE. If you come to NICE unprepared, you just get sent away, really. You just wasted 6 months. So actually, putting a bit of time in there, getting ready for it, horizon scanning will do that. And you can see as well, if your competitors are several steps ahead of you, and you try and come and try and flag it a little bit, you get turned away, really. So there is some sense of putting that resource in early might actually save you later in time, and also wasting resources.
That's probably the most compelling argument, actually. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Have we? Did a question come up online there, or was it just there wasn't anything in the chat? Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Has anyone else got anything in the room? No, thank you. Thank you to everyone for attending, and thank you to our keynote speakers and our experts, and thank you so much, Dr. Hans-Peter, for dialing in. That was invaluable. Really, thank you for your time and input. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. We're going to draw to a close. If anyone thinks of anything afterwards, you can just message me via LinkedIn, which is probably easier than giving out emails at this stage. But yeah, feel free to contact us. And we're just going to go off now into the one-to-one sessions with people that have booked a one-to-one appointment with the experts in virtual residence. If there's someone that hasn't booked a session but they'd like to book a session, just catch me now and we'll add you onto the slots. So I look forward to seeing you at the next month's Talking Point Tuesday, which is about NIHR funding, how to access it, tips, hacks, and we'll be joined by our colleagues from the Research Support Services and also my colleague Andrew McQuashy, who's going to talk about the regulatory pathway, fitting into how you submit an application. So looking forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.